Hey guys, welcome to Wednesdays. It is another requested reading Wednesday, and this is our fourth, you guys. I am so excited. We have been doing this for a month now. The stories that you guys want to hear, your suggestions, which have been all new to me and amazing. And I am just so appreciative to you guys for being here with me every week. And just hanging out. I miss you guys. And eventually we'll be doing our stories on the stage for the Tom Cherry Radio Show, or still planning on doing Danny and the Deep Blue Sea this September, I believe, for Think Dog, provided we are allowed to be in groups. Luckily, those are smaller theaters, so if we have to stagger people, we can do that. It's a smaller cast, and so we can practice social distancing as long as we need to, and still all be together. Oh, the McBrides are here. Hello, Pat Kleberg is here. Pat, I miss your face. Oh my goodness. So you guys, if you'd share it, and let's see who else we can get on tonight. And we're just going to have fun. Like I said in the preview earlier, this has British accents. And some of you know that I enjoy pretending that I know how to do one. So it may be a stretch tonight, but we're just here to have fun. So feel free to laugh, make fun of my accents. They will probably slip in and out of regional dialects because I don't know how to do one well. But it's okay. We'll get it figured out and we'll have a good time. This story tonight was suggested by Jason McBride last week, who said he enjoyed the voices I was doing in the story last week. And so he has provided us with some more. So we'll just take a few minutes. I have my cocktail. I hope you guys have one too. That's what we're doing on Wednesdays. We all have long days at work, except for Mac. Apparently he is snoozing with the cat, is what I see, and ruminating on everything that is happening in the world right now. Voice you, Jason. Well, all right then, but I don't know how good it's going to be. Scott Love has just joined. Oh my goodness, Scott. Hello. I'm so happy you're here. And Hen is here too. Oh, you guys, this is so great. This is so great. You have no idea how much I've been looking forward to this tonight. I have not read this one. So I have skimmed the first part of it, and the voices start on the first day, or first page here. Sorry, I was looking at the word day. So yeah, it is gonna be fun. It's gonna be bad, and you know, that's fine. So yeah, sorry, I was just looking at some comments. Hen says rock and roll, that's right. So yeah, take another little sip of my drink. And we'll get started. This one is called The Destructors, and it was written by Graham Greene. It was on the eve of August bank holiday that the latest recruit became the leader of the Wormsley Common Gang. No one was surprised except Mike, but Mike at the age of 9 was surprised by everything. If you don't shut your mouth, somebody once said to him, you'll get a frog down it. After that, Mike had kept his teeth tightly clamped, except when the surprise was too great. The new recruit had been with the gang since the beginning of the summer holidays, and there were possibilities about his brooding silence that all recognized. He never wasted a word, even to tell his name, until that was required of him by the rules. When he said, Trevor, it was a statement of fact. not as it would have been with the others, a statement of shame or defiance. Nor did anyone laugh except Mike, who, finding himself without support and meeting the dark gaze of the newcomer, opened his mouth and was quiet again. There was every reason why T, as he was afterward referred to, should have been an object of mockery. There was his name, and they substituted the initial because otherwise they had no excuse not to laugh at it. The fact that his father, a former architect and present clerk, had come down in the world, and that his mother considered herself better than the neighbors. What but an odd quality of danger, of the unpredictable, established him in the gang without any ignoble ceremony of initiation? The gang met every morning at an impromptu car park, the site of the last bomb of the first Blitz. The leader, who was known as Blackie, claimed to have heard it fall, and no one was precise enough in his dates to point out that he would have been 1 year old and fast asleep on the down platform of Wormsley Common Underground Station. On one side of the car park leaned the first occupied house, number 3, of the shattered Northwood Terrace. Literally leaned, for it had suffered from the blast of the bomb, and the sidewalls were supported on wooden struts. A smaller bomb and some incendiaries had fallen beyond, so that the house stuck up like a jagged tooth and carried on further wall relics of its neighbor, a dado, the remains of a fireplace. T, whose words were almost confined to voting yes or no to the plan of operations proposed each day by Blackie, once startled the whole gang by saying broodingly, "Wren built that house, father says." "Who's Wren?" "The man who built St. Paul's." "Who cares?" Blackie said. "It's only old St. Misery's." Old Misery, whose real name was Thomas, had once been a builder and decorator. He lived alone in the crippled house, doing for himself. Once a week, you could see him coming back across the common with bread and vegetables. And once, as the boys played in the car park, he put his head over the smashed wall of his garden and looked at them. "Been to the loo," one of the boys said, for it was common knowledge that since the bombs fell, something had gone wrong with the pipes of the house, and old Misery was too mean to spend money on the property. He could do the redecorating himself at cost price, but he had never learned plumbing. The loo was a wooden shed at the bottom of the narrow garden with a star-shaped hole in the door. It had escaped the blast which smashed the house next door and sucked out the window frames of number 3. The next time the gang became aware of Mr. Thomas was more surprising. Blackie, Mike, and a thin yellow boy, who for some reason was called by his surname Summers, met him on a common coming back from the market. Mr. Thomas stopped them. He said glumly, "You belong to the lot that play in the car park?" Mike was supposed to answer when Blackie stopped him. As the leader, he had responsibilities. "Suppose we are," he said ambiguously. "I got some chocolates," Mr. Thomas said. "Don't like 'em myself. Here you are. Not enough to go round, I don't suppose. There never is," he added with somber conviction. He handed over 3 packets of Smarties. The gang were puzzled and perturbed by this action and tried to explain it away. "Bet someone dropped him and he picked him up," somebody suggested. "Pinched him and then got in a bleeding funk," another thought aloud. "It's a bribe," Summers said. "He wants us to stop bouncing balls on his wall." "We'll show him we don't take bribes," Blackie said. And they sacrificed the whole morning to the game of bouncing that only Mike was young enough to enjoy. There was no sign of Mr. Thomas. Next day, T astonished them all. He was late at the rendezvous, and the voting for that day's exploit took place without him. At Blackie's suggestion, the gang was to disperse in pairs, take buses at random, and see how many free rides could be snatched from unwary conductors. The operation was to be carried out in pairs to avoid cheating. They were drawing lots for their companions when T arrived. "Where you been, T?" Blackie asked. "You can't vote now. You know the rules." "I've been there," T said. He looked at the ground as though he had thoughts to hide. "Where?" "At old Misery's." Mike's mouth opened and then hurriedly closed again with a click. He had remembered the frog. "At old Misery's," Blackie said. There was nothing in the rules against it, but he had a sensation that T was treading on dangerous ground. He asked hopefully, "Did you break in?" "No, I rang the bell." "And what did you say?" "I said I wanted to see his house." "What did he do?" "He showed it to me." "Pinch anything?" "No." "What'd you do it for then?" The gang had gathered round. It was as though an impromptu court were about to form and to try some case of deviation. T said, "It's a beautiful house." And still watching the ground, meeting no one's eyes, he licked his lips first one way, then the other. We'll take a sip. Hi, Liz. I'm happy you're here. Thank you for joining us tonight. "What do you mean, a beautiful house?" Blackie asked with a scorn. "It's got a staircase 200 years old like a corkscrew. Nothing holds it up." "What do you mean, nothing holds it up? Does it float?" "It's to do with the opposite forces," old Misery said. "What else?" "There's paneling. Like in the Blue Boar." 200 years old. "Is old Misery 200 years old?" Mike laughed suddenly and then was quiet again. The meeting was in a serious mood. For the first time since T had strolled into the car park on the first day of the holidays, his position was in danger. It only needed a single use of his real name, and the gang would be at his heels. "What'd you do it for?" Blackie asked. He was just. He had no jealousy. He was anxious to retain T in the gang if he could. It was the word beautiful that worried him. That belonged to a class world that you could still see parodied in the Wormsley Common Empire by a man wearing a top hat and a monocle with a haw-haw accent. He was tempted to say, "My dear Trevor, old chap," and unleash his hellhounds. "If you'd broken in," he said sadly. That indeed would have been an exploit worthy of the gang. "This was better," T said. "I found out things." He continued to stare at his feet, not meeting anybody's eye, as though he were absorbed in some dream he was unwilling or ashamed to share. "What things?" "Old Misery's going to be away all tomorrow and bank holiday." Blackie said with relief, "You mean we could break in and pinch things?" somebody asked. Blackie said, "Nobody's going to pinch things. Breaking in, that's good enough, isn't it? We don't want any court stuff." "I don't want to pinch anything," T said. "I've got a better idea." "What is it?" T raised his eyes, as gray and disturbed as the drab August day. "We'll pull it down," he said. "We'll destroy it." Blackie gave a single hoot of laughter and then, like Mike, fell quiet, daunted by the serious, implacable gaze. "What'd the police be doing all the time?" he said. "They'd never know. We do it from inside. I found a way in," he said with a sort of intensity. "We'd be like worms, don't you see, in an apple. When we come out again, there'd be nothing there, no staircase, no panels, nothing but just walls. And then we'd make the walls fall down, somehow." "We'd go to Jug," Blackie said. "Who's to prove? And anyway, we wouldn't have pinched anything," he added without the smallest flicker of glee. "There wouldn't be anything to pinch after we'd finished." "I've never had it going to prison for breaking things," Summers said. "There wouldn't be time," Blackie said. "I've seen housebreakers at work." "There are 12 of us," T said. "We'd organize." "None of us know how." "I know," T said. He looked across at Blackie. "Have you got a better plan?" "Today," Mike said tactlessly, "we're pinching free rides." "Free rides," T said. "You can stand down, Blackie, if you'd rather. The gang's got to vote." "Put it up then," Blackie said uneasily. "It's proposed that tomorrow and Monday we destroy old Misery's house." "Hear, hear," said a fat boy called Joe. "Who's in favor?" T said. "It's carried." "How do we start?" Summers asked. He'll tell you, Blackie said. It was the end of his leadership. He went away to the back of the car park and began to kick a stone, dribbling it this way and that. There was only one old Morris in the park, for few cars were left there except lorries. Without an attendant, there was no safety. He took a flying kick at the car and scraped a little paint off the rear mudguard. Beyond, paying no more attention to him than to a stranger, the gang had gathered round T. Blackie was dimly aware of the fickleness of favor. He thought of going home, of never returning, of letting them all discover the hollowness of T's leadership. But suppose, after all, what T proposed was possible. Nothing like it had ever been done before. The fame of the Wormsley Common Car Park Gang would surely reach around London. There would be headlines in the papers. Even the grown-up gangs who ran the betting and the all-in wrestling and the Barrow Boys would hear with respect of how old Misery's house had been destroyed. Driven by the pure, simple, and altruistic ambition of fame for the gang, Blackie came back to where T stood in the shadow of Misery's wall. You guys liking it so far? I am. Good choice, Jason. T was giving his orders with decision. It was as though this plan had been with him all his life, pondered through the seasons, now in his 15th year crystallized with the pain of puberty. You, he said to Mike, bring some big nails, the biggest you can find, and a hammer. Anyone else who wants to bring a hammer and a screwdriver. We'll need plenty of them. Chisels, too. We can't have too many chisels. Can anybody bring a saw? I can, Mike said. Not a child's saw, T said. A real saw. Blackie realized he had raised his hand like any ordinary member of the gang. Right. You bring one, Blackie. But now there's a difficulty. We want a hacksaw. What's a hacksaw? Someone asked. You can get them at Woolworths, Summer said. The fat boy called Joe said gloomily, I knew it would end in a collection. I'll get one myself, T said. I don't want your money, but I can't buy a sledgehammer. Blackie said, they're working on number 15. I know where they'll leave their stuff for bank holiday. Then that's all, T said. We meet here at 9 sharp. I've got to go to church, Mike said. Come over the wall and whistle. We'll let you in. On Sunday morning, all were punctual except Blackie, even Mike. Mike had had a stroke of luck. His mother fell ill, his father was tired after Saturday night, and he was told to go to church alone with many warnings of what would happen if he strayed. Blackie had had difficulty in smuggling out the saw and then in finding the sledgehammer at the back of number 15. He approached the house from a lane at the rear of the garden for fear of the policeman's beat along the main road. The tired evergreens kept off a stormy sun. Another wet bank holiday was being prepared over the Atlantic, beginning in swirls of dust under the trees. Blackie climbed the wall into Misery's garden. There was no sign of anybody anywhere. The loo stood like a tomb in a neglected graveyard. The curtains were drawn. The house slept. Blackie lumbered nearer with the saw and the sledgehammer. Perhaps, after all, nobody had turned up. The plan had been a wild invention. They had woken wiser. But when he came close to the back door, he could hear a confusion of sound, hardly louder than a hive in a swarm. A clickety-clack, a bang, 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 a scraping, a creaking, a sudden painful crack. He thought, it's true, and whistled. They opened the back door to him, and he came in. He had at once the impression of organization, very different from the old happy-go-lucky ways under his leadership. For a while he wandered up and down stairs looking for T. Nobody addressed him. He had a sense of great urgency, and already he could begin to see the plan. The interior of the house was being carefully demolished without touching the outer walls. Summers, with hammer and chisel, was ripping out the skirting boards in the ground floor dining room. He had already smashed the panels of the door. In the same room, Joe was heaving up the parquet blocks, exposing the softwood floorboards over the cellar. Coils of wire came out of the damaged skirting, and Mike sat happily on the floor, clipping the wires. On the curved stairs, two of the gang were working hard with an inadequate child saw on the banisters. When they saw Blackie's big saw, they signaled for it wordlessly. When he next saw them, a quarter of the banisters had been dropped into the hall. He found T at last in the bathroom. He sat moodily in the least cared for room in the house, listening to the sounds coming up from below. "You've really done it," Blackie said with awe. "What's going to happen?" "We've only just begun," T said. He looked at the sledgehammer and gave his instructions. "You stay here and break the bath and the wash basin. Don't bother about the pipes. They come later." Mike appeared at the door. "I finished with the wire, T," he said. "Good. You've just got to go wandering around now. The kitchen's in the basement. Smash all the china and glass and bottles you can lay hold of. Don't turn on the taps. We don't want a flood yet. Then go into all the rooms and turn out the drawers. If they are locked, get one of the others to break them open. Tear up any papers you find and smash all the ornaments. Better take a carving knife with you from the kitchen. The bedroom's opposite here. Open the pillows and tear up the sheets. That's enough for the moment. And you, Blackie, when you've finished in here, crack the plaster in the passage up with your sledgehammer." "What are you going to do?" Blackie said. "I'm looking for something special," T said. It was nearly lunchtime before Blackie had finished and went in search of T. Chaos had advanced. The kitchen was a shambles of broken glass and china. The dining room was stripped of parquet, the skirting was up, the door had been taken off its hinges, and the destroyers had moved up a floor. Streaks of light came in through the closed shutters where they worked with the seriousness of creators. And destruction, after all, is a form of creation. A kind of imagination had seen this house as it had now become. Mike said, "I've got to go home for dinner." "Who else?" T asked, but all the others, on one excuse or another, had brought provisions with them. They squatted in the ruins of the room and swapped unwanted sandwiches. Half an hour for lunch, and they were at work again. By the time Mike returned, they were on the top floor, and by 6, the superficial damage was completed. The doors were all off, all the skirtings raised, the furniture pillaged and ripped and smashed. No one could have slept in the house except on a bed of broken plaster. T gave his orders. 8 o'clock next morning, and to escape notice, they climbed singly over the garden wall into the car park. Only Blackie and T were left. The light had nearly gone, and when they touched a switch, nothing worked. Mike had done his job thoroughly. "Did you find anything special?" Blackie asked. T nodded. "Come over here," he said, "and look." Out of both pockets, he drew bundles of pound notes. "Old Misery's savings," he said. "Mike ripped out the mattress, but he missed them." "What are you going to do? Share them?" "We aren't thieves," T said. "Nobody's going to steal anything from this house. I've kept these for you and me, a celebration." He knelt down on the floor and counted them out. There were 70 in all. "We'll burn them," he said, "one by one." And taking it in turns, they held a note upward and lit the top corner so that the flame burnt slowly toward their fingers. The gray ash floated above them and fell on their heads like age. "Oh, I'd love to see old Misery's face when we're through," T said. "You hate him a lot," Blackie said. "Of course I don't hate him," T said. "There'd be no fun if I hated him." The last burning note illuminated his brooding face. "All this hate and love," he said, "it's soft, it's hooey. There's only things, Blackie." And he looked around the room, crowded with the unfamiliar shadows of half things, broken things, former things. "I'll race you home, Blackie," he said. Next morning, the serious destruction started. 2 were missing, Mike and another boy, whose parents were off to Southend and Brighton in spite of the slow, warm drops that had begun to fall and the rumble of thunder in the estuary, like the first guns of the old Blitz. "We've got to hurry," T said. Summers was restive. "Haven't we done enough?" he said. "I've been given a bulb for slot machines. This is like work." "We've hardly started," T said. Why, there's all the floors left and the stairs. We haven't taken out a single window. You voted like the others. We are going to destroy this house. There won't be anything left when we've finished. They began again on the first floor, picking up the top floorboards next to the outer wall, leaving the joists exposed. Then they sawed through the joists and retreated into the hall, as what was left of the floor healed and sank. They had learned with practice, and the second floor collapsed more easily. By the evening, an odd exhilaration seized them as they looked down the great hall of the house. They ran risks and made mistakes. When they thought of the windows, it was too late to reach them. Cool, Joe said, and dropped a penny down into the dry, rubble-filled well. It cracked and span among the broken glass. Why did we start this? Summers asked with astonishment. T was already on the ground, digging at the rubble, clearing a space along the outer wall. Turn on the taps, he said. It's too dark for anyone to see now, and in the morning it won't matter. The water overtook them on the stairs and fell through the floorless rooms. It was then they heard Mike's whistle at the back. Something's wrong, Blackie said. They could hear his urgent breathing as they unlocked the door. The bogies? Summers asked. Old Misery, Mike said. He's on his way. He put his head between his knees and retched. Ran all the way, he said with pride. But why? T said. He told me, he protested with the fury of the child he had never been. It isn't fair. He was down at Southend, Mike said, and he was on the train coming back, said it was too cold and wet. He paused and gazed at the water. My, you've had a storm here. Is the roof leaking? How long will he be? 5 minutes. I gave him all the slip and ran. You better clear, Summers said. We've done enough anyway. No, we haven't. Anybody could do this. This was the shattered, hollowed house with nothing left but the walls. Yet walls could be preserved. Facades were valuable. They could build inside again more beautifully than before. This could be a home, he said angrily. We've got to finish. Don't move. Let me think. There's no time, a boy said. There's got to be a way, she said. We couldn't have got this far. We've done a lot, Blackie said. No, we haven't. Somebody watch the front. Can't do any more. He may come in at the back. Watch the back too, T began to plead. Just give me a minute and I'll fix it. I swear I'll fix it. But his authority had gone with his ambiguity. He was only one of the gang. Please, he said. Please. Summers mimicked him and then suddenly struck home with the fatal name. Run along home, Trevor. T stood with his back to the rubble like a boxer knocked groggy against the ropes. He had no words as his dreams shook and slid. Then Blackie acted before the gang had time to laugh, pushing Summers backwards. I'll watch the front, T, he said, and cautiously he opened the shutters of the hall. The gray, wet common stretched ahead, and the lamps gleamed in the puddles. Someone's coming, T. No, it's not him. What's your plan, T? Tell Mike to go out to the loo and hide close beside it. When he hears me whistle, he's got to count 10 and start to shout. Shout what? Oh, help! Anything. You hear, Mike? Blackie said. He was the leader again. He took a quick look between the shutters. He's coming, T. Quick, Mike, the loo. Stay here, Blackie. All of you till I yell. Where you going, T? Don't worry, I'll see to this. I said I would, didn't I? Old Misery came limping off the common. He had mud on his shoes, and he stopped to scrape them on the pavement's edge. He didn't want to soil his house, which stood jagged and dark between the bomb sites, saved so narrowly, as he believed, from destruction. Even the fanlight had been left unbroken by the bomb's blast. Somewhere, somebody whistled. Old Misery looked sharply round. He didn't trust whistles. A child was shouting. It seemed to come from his own garden. Then a boy ran into the road from the car park. Mr. Thomas! Mr. Thomas! What is it? I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Thomas. One of us got taken short, and we thought you wouldn't mind, and now we can't get out. What do you mean, boy? He's got stuck in your loo. He'd no business. Haven't I seen you before? You showed me your house. So I did. That doesn't give you the right to... Do hurry, Mr. Thomas. He'll suffocate. Nonsense. Can't suffocate. Wait till I put my bag in. I'll carry your bag. Oh, no, you don't. I carry my own. This way, Mr. Thomas. I can't get in the garden that way. I've got to go through the house. But you can get in the garden this way, Mr. Thomas. We often do. You often do? He followed the boy with a scandalized fascination. When? What right? Do you see? The wall's low. I'm not going to climb walls in my own garden. It's absurd. This is how we do it. 1 foot here, 1 foot there, and over. The boy's face peered down, an arm shot out, and Mr. Thomas found his bag taken and deposited on the other side of the wall. Give me back my bag, Mr. Thomas said. From the loo, a boy yelled and yelled. I'll call the police. Your bag's all right, Mr. Thomas. Look, 1 foot there on your right, now just above to your left. Mr. Thomas climbed over his own garden wall. Here's your bag, Mr. Thomas. I'll have the wall built up, Mr. Thomas said. I'll not have you boys coming over here using my loo. He stumbled on the path, but the boy caught his elbow and supported him. Thank you, my boy, he murmured automatically. Somebody shouted again through the dark. I'm coming, Mr. Thomas called. He said to the boy beside him, I'm not unreasonable. Been a boy myself. As long as things are done regular. I don't mind you playing around the place Saturday mornings. Sometimes I like company. Only it's got to be regular. One of you asks leave and I say yes. Sometimes I'll say no. Won't feel like it. And you come in at the front door and out at the back. No garden walls. Do get him out, Mr. Thomas. He won't come to any harm in my loo, Mr. Thomas said, stumbling slowly down the garden. Oh, my rheumatics, he said. Always get 'em on bank holiday. I've got to go careful. There's loose stones here. Give me your hand. Do you know what my horoscope said yesterday? Abstain from any dealings in first half of week. Danger of serious crash. That might be on this path, Mr. Thomas said. They speak in the parables and double meanings. He paused at the door of the loo. What's the matter in there? He called. There was no reply. Perhaps he fainted, the boy said. Not my loo. Here, you, come out, Mr. Thomas said, and giving a great jerk at the door, he nearly fell on his back when it swung easily open. A hand first supported him and then pushed him hard. His head hit the opposite wall and he sat heavily down. His bag hit his feet. A hand whipped the key out of the lock and the door slammed. Let me out, he called, and he heard the key turn in the lock. A serious crash, he thought, and felt dithery and confused and old. A voice spoke to him softly through the star-shaped hole in the door. Don't worry, Mr. Thomas, it said. We won't hurt you, not if you stay quiet. Mr. Thomas put his head between his hands and pondered. He had noticed that there was only one lorry in the car park, and he felt certain that the driver would not come for it before the morning. Nobody could hear him from the road in front, and the lane at the back was seldom used. Anyone who passed there would be hurrying home and would not pause for what they would certainly take to be drunken cries. And if he did call help, who, on a lonely bank holiday evening, would have the courage to investigate? Mr. Thomas sat on the loo and pondered with the wisdom of age. After a while, it seemed to him that there were sounds in the silence. They were faint and came from the direction of his house. He stood up and peered through the ventilation hole. Between the cracks in one of the shutters, he saw a light. Not the light of a lamp, but the wavering light that a candle might give. Then he thought he heard the sound of hammering and scraping and chipping. He thought of burglars. Perhaps they had employed the boys at Scout. But why should burglars engage in what sounded more and more like a stealthy form of carpentry? Mr. Thomas let out an experimental yell, but nobody answered. The noise could not even have reached his enemies. Dun, dun, dun. Mike had gone home to bed, but the rest stayed. The question of leadership no longer concerned the gang. With nails, chisels, screwdrivers, anything that was sharp and penetrating, they moved around the inner walls, worrying at the mortar between the bricks. They started too high, and it was Blackie who had hit on the damp course and realized the work could be halved if they weakened the joints immediately above. It was a long, tiring, unamusing job, but at last it was finished. The gutted house stood there, balanced on a few inches of mortar between the damp course and the bricks. There remained the most dangerous task of all, out in the open at the edge of the bomb site. Summers was sent to watch the road for passers-by, and Mr. Thomas, sitting on the loo, heard clearly now the sound of sawing. It no longer came from his house, and that reassured him a little. He felt less concerned. Perhaps the other noises, too, had no significance. A voice spoke to him through the hole. "Mr. Thomas." "Let me out," Mr. Thomas said sternly. "Here's a blanket," the voice said, and a long gray sausage was worked through the hole and fell in swaths over Mr. Thomas's head. "There's nothing personal," the voice said. "We want you to be comfortable tonight." "Tonight," Mr. Thomas repeated incredulously. "Catch," the voice said. "Penny buns. We've buttered them and sausage rolls. We don't want you to starve, Mr. Thomas." Mr. Thomas pleaded desperately. "A joke's a joke, boy. Let me out and I won't say a thing. I've got rheumatics. I've got to sleep comfortable." "Oh, you wouldn't sleep. You wouldn't be comfortable. Not in your house, you wouldn't. Not now." "What do you mean, boy?" But the footsteps receded. There was only the silence of night, no sound of sawing. Mr. Thomas tried one more yell, but he was daunted and rebuked by the silence. A long way off, an owl hooted and made away again on its muffled flight through the soundless world. At 7 next morning, the driver came to fetch his lorry. He climbed into the seat and tried to start the engine. He was vaguely aware of a voice shouting, but it didn't concern him. At last, the engine responded, and he backed the lorry until it touched the great wooden shore that supported Mr. Thomas's house. That way, he could drive right out and down the street without reversing. The lorry moved forward and was momentarily checked as though something were pulling it from behind, and then went on to the sound of a long, rumbling crash. The driver was astonished to see bricks bouncing ahead of him while stones hit the roof of his cab. He put on his brakes. When he climbed out, the whole landscape had suddenly altered. There was no house beside the car park, only a hill of rubble. He went round and examined the back of his car for damage and found a rope tied there that was still twisted at the other end around part of a wooden strut. The driver again became aware of somebody shouting. It came from the wooden erection, which was the nearest thing to a house in that desolation of broken brick. The driver climbed the smashed wall and unlocked the door. Mr. Thomas came out of the loo. He was wearing a gray blanket to which flakes of pastry adhered. He gave a sobbing cry. "My house," he said. "Where's my house?" "Search me," the driver said. His eye lit on the remains of a bath and what had once been a dresser, and he began to laugh. There wasn't anything left anywhere. "How dare you laugh?" Mr. Thomas said. "It was my house. My house." "I'm sorry," the driver said, making heroic efforts. But when he remembered the sudden check to his lorry, the crash of bricks falling, he became convulsed again. One moment the house had stood there with such dignity between the bomb sites like a man in a top hat. Then bang, crash, there wasn't anything left. Not anything. He said, "I'm sorry. I can't help it, Mr. Thomas. There's nothing personal, but you've got to admit it's funny." Oh my goodness. Can you imagine being the driver? And all it took was moving your truck and the entire house fell. Oh my goodness. Oh, I want to say boys will be boys, but my heavens, I cannot imagine. Oh, who is still here, you guys? Did you enjoy that? That was fun. Jason, thank you so much. Rusty again, but it's fine. We are going on 40 minutes tonight. That is awesome, you guys. I am so glad to have seen you. Happy that you were here. Just checking for comments. You guys, please share this, and let's see how big we can make this group on Wednesdays. I'm still going to be doing Saturday pose, and this week is the, oh, sorry, Jason just made a comment. You did it. You brought life to the anarchy and destruction of the old aristocracy. Well, that's what I do. I bring life to anarchy, I guess. I don't know what that means, but okay. Anarchy. All I can see in my head right now is the two little boys on Talladega Nights. Anarchy. I don't know what that means, but I love it. So yeah, you guys, thank you. Elizabeth, Liz, I love you. Cheryl, you are so welcome. Thank your husband. This was his story. So if you guys have any other stories that you just love and know that I can get a copy of easily, let me know. Send me a message, put a comment here, share it in the event when I get it posted for next week. I am having so much fun with this. The Saturday Poe afternoons are fantastic. It'll be the Mystery of Marie Roget, which is another long one. So we will certainly be tucked in for that one. I'm hoping, since it is Memorial Day weekend, we can get one good day. If we can get a good day Saturday, we'll go outside, and hopefully all of the neighbors will have mowed before 3 o'clock. And yeah, what did you say, Jason? Hopefully the cat walled up in the basement. Oh no, that would be awful. Can you imagine? Oh, what was I reading? I don't remember. I'm gonna have to pull it out. It's a book I found at a library book sale for, I don't know, 10 cents or something, and it's crazy. And they find like an ancient Indian burial ground in Maine, I think, maybe Rhode Island. And there's like a burial catacomb, and then there are tunnels that lead everywhere, and of course there's evil spirits, and one invades a doll, and it's one of those reads that I get through in a weekend, and it's the first time it scared me. There's a little girl holding a doll on the cover, and the doll's face is a hologram, which is bizarre, and I can't have the book sitting upright. Like, it has to be upside down because the hologram is frightening, and I can't look at it. I don't know. I don't have a fear of haunted dolls. My sister did. She had nightmares about dolls climbing up the wall of our house and tapping on her bedroom window. But I never had the doll thing. So I don't know why this particular one does, except that it is out of proportion to the doll, and not at all the doll described in the book. And I think that's what bothers me the most. Because I'm cool with, I love scary covers on books. This one, it doesn't match, and I think that just offends my sensibilities. So maybe I'm kind of a snob that way, or just weird. I'll go with just weird. It's fine. So we are going to wrap it up for tonight. Thank you again, guys, for being here. I'm starting to ramble, which means I probably ought to go fix some supper and hang out with my hubby for a while. So I will see you guys on Saturday, And yeah, thank you again so much. I will see you guys soon. Bye.